Вітаю всіх присутніх. Ми будемо розпочинати.
Good morning. Let's get started our webinar called Reconstruction of the Cities Destroyed by the War Experience Challenges and Opportunities. We announced this webinar within the project ANTS, Restoring Ukraine Together, that's implemented with the support of the EU and is aimed at establishing effective processes between all stakeholders, that's local authorities, central government partners, expert and communities, as well as civil society. That's why it is very important within the framework of this meeting to discuss the main areas, challenges, complexities the communities face, and to see what the opportunities are for all the stakeholders. That's why we set several goals here, and hopefully we'll accomplish these goals. The first thing we want to do is just to share successful experience, and the first presenters are going to be representatives of the communities that were exposed and incurred destruction, and they were the first to realize that communication is of primary importance to make sure that the communities can secure comfortable life for the people in the communities. We are going to talk about the success stories of Trostyanets and Borodyanska communities, as well as Mykolaievska community. We are also going to have an input of the experts, because without them it would be impossible to restore the life in the communities, and these are the experts that are already dealing with the challenges everybody is facing. Nobody was prepared for what we are having, and nobody was prepared for the type of communication we would need. So today we'll see the success stories, and we'll discuss this successful experience to figure out the opportunities for others that are looking for partners. When I talk about opportunities, let me just mention that the last session is going to deal with the international cooperation of the communities and expert communities and associations in the EU member states. And let me just tell you logistically that we have simultaneous translation today, and to use interpretation, you need to choose the language of the preference and mute the original sound. We are ready and open for the cooperation, and we are here for the communities that suffered destruction as a result of full-fledged Russian aggression. We are here to assist local authorities, because it's very important to find partners and effectively use partners to reconstruct the communities with the help of the representatives of architectural associations. We are going to have representatives of Rotterdam Association, businesses that are keen in engaging in post-war recovery in Ukraine with the use of the advanced technologies and the best international experience. Apparently, reconstruction process cannot be just a reconstruction per se, and I think the first speakers that are going to share their experience and success stories will tell us about that in more detail. They will tell us about advanced technologies and methods that they employed to make sure that reconstruction is the best and will secure better life for people that live in these communities. That's something that is going to contribute to the development of economy in our country, and to make sure that the victory is coming shortly. The participants of our webinar include Alexandra Sienkiewicz, Mayor of Mykolaiv, Yuri Bova, Mayor of Trostyanets, Georgy Yarko, acting head of village head, acting head of village Borodyanka. We'll have the project coordinator from the Netherlands Urban Network, Alexander Tkachenko, and Rybak, Executive Director of IC Consultant in Ukraine, Tadej Toulouse, representative of the NGO Stand with Ukraine, actively cooperating with our communities. And we also have Vera Wintergan, analyst on the design of the European policy, and she's working for the new European Bauhaus team. I think that everybody might have some questions, and today's discussion is going to be organized in a sequence of sessions, and after each subject matter, we have an opportunity to raise questions. So let's move over to the first session that's called the experience of reconstructing life in the communities. And I am happy to give the floor to the representatives of Ukrainian communities that can share their success stories. That's Yuri Bova, Yuri Yerko, and Alexander Sienkiewicz. Let me give the floor to Yuri Bova. He is with us. Nice to see you, and it would be great to hear more about your work. I met you at many international conferences and workshops, and the contribution that you've made to the development of your community and to the country per se is really impressive. Your community was one of the communities that was mentioned as part of the reconstruction plan. With respect to the best international practices. So it would be great to hear from you about the partners that you have, what complexities you faced on the way, and your advice to those communities in Ukraine that are trying to follow your suit. What's the best way to go? Yuri Bova. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Trostyanets community, Sumy Oblast, was occupied since day one of the war, starting February 24. We were under occupation for 31 days. Russians left lots of damage, estimated dozens of millions of American dollars, to be more exact, to expel Russians from our region. Armed forces worked hard at territorial defense, as well as civilians contributed to that. So the damages are estimated are worth more than 100 million US dollars. That includes utility companies, housing of people, private property. 1,200 of objects are damaged. 58 houses are destroyed. 270 apartments are fully destroyed in the apartment blocks. Schools, kindergartens are heavily damaged. The hospital was destroyed with the Russian tax, and it was intentional. It was not a indiscriminate shelling, but it was targeted. The same about electricity supply, water supply, grids. All that was in a horrible state following the liberation, and that makes us different from the other communities that are subjected just to shelling. Occupation is not just shelling; that's looting that we've experienced. All CCTVs, servers, computers, all equipment, utility companies' equipment, all the tools that utility companies had, all that was stolen. When we came back, it was an empty city where 99% of the private sector was destroyed. All the stores were looted, all storage facilities were looted, and there was nothing, everything was stolen, nothing to say about the equipment. Ambulances, buses, everything was just taken. If they couldn't take it, they destroyed it. So that's the reality of our life. That's the reality of the situation that we've seen in many other areas that were occupied. So when being defeated, when running, these savages are going to take everything, washing machine, everything they can take. And those cities that are going to be deoccupied, unfortunately, are going to face this type of situation. And structurally, everything is damaged. The furniture is destroyed. The facilities are destroyed or soiled. I apologize, but because they act as animals, everything, all premises, all facilities where they stayed are destroyed and dirtied. So that's why we divided reconstruction work into several categories. That's immediate work. So we had to demine everything because you cannot enter a single premise unless our AODs were there and examined it for explosive devices. That's the first step, because sometimes we are prone to do something fast, and we know that the longer Russians stay there, the more negative surprises we could have there. So we had mines with 3 levels of protection. So experts worked on that, and even ordinary deminer couldn't liquidate them. Maybe called specialized experts. It was really very dangerous. The first scene that's things that had to be reconstructed urgently because we had to start providing services. If it is a liberated city, we started seeing inflow of people, so people come and start complaining. So my things were stolen, my husband is missing, so we needed to organize the services, and the first is compensation for the damaged property, and that require cross-cutting examination and assessment of the damaged properties because somebody left. For instance, we had to assess the extent of damages. So we set up several commissions, and the experts had a schedule and done that by the streets, because if you go by complaints, that's going to be a little bit chaotic, and it would increase the workload. But we developed the schedule and said, okay, so the commissions are going to work in this particular street. One commission is taking left side, the second is taking the right side. And that's working nice. People are waiting at home. They don't come to us with complaints or requests, and people understand what is happening. And there is a system. When examining the streets, first we requested for demining services, and then we conducted assessment. What I would advise, I would recommend this type of work when it comes to damaged property. Police also is investigating, but I would recommend video and photo recording so that you can have this as well. You can have the footage, because sometimes the documents could be lost. The documents are transferred from police to NABU, State Bureau of Investigation, and something could be lost in the document. You need to have your file of the documents with the video and photo footage. And if you have that in your community, you have these cases, you have these files, so to say, you have it in your archives, you have respective documents, and you should keep that until the premises are recovered. Sometimes journalists come and request for the video footage of the destroyed buildings, because several months later the city looks different. In a year, that would look even more different. The next thing, we do understand that if it is a destroyed city, you cannot rely exclusively on the tax process, because whatever business it is, small, medium, or big business, so it's all kind of ruined. We provided for tax privileges, so you cannot rely on a tax process. So my advice is very simple. Take your contacts, call your friends, partners, anybody whom you know, call, send, email them. We wrote around 500 letters to secure partners and start glass in the windows without waiting for the state to help us. The state has the following role. They help when you cannot do something on your own. They task of the government at the moment is the support of the armed forces and military capability of the armed forces. So you should rely on your own forces and write letters to international sponsors, international foundations. There are lots of them at the moment. I am ready to share the list of international partners with you. I'll tell you whom we partnered with. There are foundations that deal with food services, for instance. I would request going to some organizations that provide really high quality food, and they provide that not with buses but with railway cars. Even buses are really appreciated because we didn't have anything, but there are kind of major organizations that can provide you lots of food that would meet your needs. So the most important thing is to provide food to the people so that people would get into kind of, routine life and start recovering their property. So you have to pursue systemic approaches to psychological recovery as well. So people will have to have this opportunity to come back to their standard livelihood. There are volunteers, but we did the following. We have schools, and there we set up volunteer centers under the guidance of the municipality, and they took care of handing out food packages, construction, diapers, medicines, whatever was needed. And they took care of a specific neighborhood. So we divided the city by neighborhoods, people not running around the city, they just go to the place where they live. Talking about physical recovery or recovery per se, reconstruction, we divided that into urgent needs and, for instance, cleaning. Some things require guidance of municipality, and we took care of systemic approaches. Every sponsor whom you are going to go to, they will ask you directly, what is it that you need? So you need to have a checklist regarding specific premises, what kind of excavator, what kind of truck, what kind of computer, what kind of video camera, medical equipment, or ambulance, whatever you need. So you have to be really specific. And if you have this list, then donors know that, okay, you know some specific things. It's not that you request something and you don't know what it is that you requested. And if you have this specific list, it means that you have this detailed specific approach. And then you have to be transparent about receiving. You have to take pictures, you have to support that with proper documentation and send this immediately to donor to report about the assistance you received. A lot of donors that we worked with, the Dutch foundations, they started with small works and then saw the way we reported on that, and then expanded the assistance. Open Door Ukraine, they started with small project, now they are renovating the school. So there are lots of different objects that are being reconstructed by different organizations. Talking about complexity, several donors come and say, okay, we'll reconstruct this school. We have to understand that Western foundations have sometimes slow bureaucratic procedures. They have to approve that at the board, they have to take a look at the budget, assess that against your budget. We want everything to be done within 1 month. So sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 months. So that's a nuance. That's about emergency works. A few words about serious work. We are going to face big money coming to Ukraine to reconstruct Ukraine. At every meeting we participate in, our task is to reconstruct, but better. We don't want to restore the old filtering station in the way it existed. We needed to rebuild this system. So that means new projects, new technologies, new training of experts, etc. Sometimes you need to request not just for the physical assistance, but for training of your experts so that they would learn best experience, and you have to develop the projects of this type of recovery. It's nice to see Yelena Rybak. I see Consulenten. They offered charity support to us. It's free of charge, and they develop master plan of city recovery, and that's the view into the future, because sometimes there are things that you don't have to recover. For instance, I asked the chief doctor, we are going to reconstruct polyclinics. Should we do it in the way it existed? Maybe we should plan offices differently. Maybe we should have a different department here, different doctors. First, you need to develop the plan and then start working. You shouldn't hurry, because you can make a lot of mistakes in this type of work if you rush. So you have to rush if it is an emergency. And as to other things, you have to carefully think through. We had the meeting just before this meeting where we discussed this with experts. Listen to the experts, international experts, develop international partners, Germany, Austria, the United States, Sweden. All countries are open for partnership, and we are doing our best to increase the number of partners. Every partnership is an experience as to what the old boiler house, the culture hub could be restored into. You shouldn't reconstruct it as a Soviet type of a hub. Maybe this culture center should be turned into youth center, and maybe you shouldn't renovate the way it existed, but they destroyed it. Okay, so that's a chance for us to build it better. So let's reconstruct this old infrastructure differently, better. Sometimes it's painful for us, but take this as a chance to build things better, as modern things. And I think today we'll hear international experts that are ready to help Ukraine. Let's take their experience and introduce this in our communities. We restored 66% of the objects. We restored the small ones. One school and one kindergarten are left to be reconstructed. Or these are large objects, the railway station, the square near the railway station. We are among 6 other cities that we are going to receive the governmental support to do that, but we need to develop methodological approaches. We have a private commercial property there, so what shall we do with that? We need to analyze that, and jointly with the reconstruction agency headed by Naim, we will develop the best experience so that other communities will follow us. We need to do that yet, but if it is reconstruction projects, you have to remember that inclusivity, energy efficiency are the requirements. Again, when developing the projects, let's say if it was a destroyed house, it's not just the walls, electricity, water supply, and glasses. That's also energy efficiency. That's why the projects should include these elements so that you do it properly immediately. We reconstructed around 60% of the objects. Maybe there are more, but we didn't count all of them. And that's around 100 million of hryvnia that we attracted from different subjects. It's not state budget funds. 7 minutes is not enough to tell you everything. Thanks a lot for your attention. I am ready and open for any consultations on one-on-one basis if you need. It wasn't 7 minutes that you took, but at the end of the session, we will have Q&A. Let me give the floor to Georgy Yerko, that's head of Borodyanka village, and he is going to share his experience. While natural readiness for donor partnership is something that should be cultivated. You have to develop ready-made projects, and that's a huge work. Let me thank Mayor of Trostyanets, and the floor is given to Yerka Borodyanka. Borodyanka was also occupied, and on the territory of our village we had active hostilities going on. These atrocities and horror that we saw following liberation of village did have an effect on everybody in our community and in the world. We were the first affected by airstrikes. Apartment blocks were destroyed, private houses were destroyed, and following airstrikes, we had 11 houses completely destroyed. That's 711 apartments that were destroyed. 370 houses were completely destroyed, and 380 houses more are in need of fundamental reconstruction. We saw entire streets destroyed in our village. 9 objects of the in communal ownership, that school, prosecutor's office, employment office, police, and all that was destroyed too, with helicopters and tanks. They destroyed everything they could destroy. When we came back to the village, we restored electricity supply and communication. That was the first necessity. Then we started working with critical infrastructure, water supply, and wastewater management. Kiev military administration helped us, and emergency service helped a lot us with that. Demining is very important too. We are agricultural community, and upon liberation, and that was in April, we immediately had to get down to working in the fields. Not everything was demined immediately, and on all fields we are the ones that we could work on. But we coped with that. When Russians were leaving, they destroyed everything, buses, agricultural equipment. Agricultural equipment was completely burnt. Combine harvesters. It was a horror that we saw. But companies were really supportive of each other, and slowly, gradually, we recovered, and we managed to undertake a sowing campaign, and we collected our harvest. As to the work with different foundations, we did feel international support. We attracted the government of Lithuania. They are helping us with the reconstruction of the school, but we need bomb shelters in the schools, and we spent 1 million euro for a proper bomb shelter, and now the contractor that is funded by the Lithuanians is engaged in the reconstruction of the school that has modern bomb shelters. Switzerland assisted in reconstruction of inclusive resource center. Hungary is assisting with reconstruction of school and hospital in Zahaltse village that is part of our community. American Foundation is assisting and reconstructing kindergarten in Borodyanka village. So we are actively working jointly with our partners and keep searching for donors and looking for twin cities as well, because thanks to their support, we received in Borodyanka thermal power plant equipment. That was thanks UNDP Foundation and other foundations. We had the supply of equipment for community utility companies. That was so important. So international partnership is very important. That has lots of advantages. There something that unites us, and we are trying to learn the way the best companies in Europe or the world work. It's never late to learn, and that's something that we keep doing.
Rebuilding the work of the enterprises is the key task in our community now. And now we are part of the rebuilding effort. The agency led by Mustafa Nayem is working with us together with architecture, with the Department of City Restoration of the Kyiv City State Administration. We are working together on the general plan of the streets of our town and our community as a whole. So we hope for further cooperation, we hope for the support of the donors, and we hope that we can rebuild the housing together for the residents and also the buildings in the private sector. We would like to see our city safe, environmentally friendly, clean. But let's not forget that without production facilities, without industry of any kind, we wouldn't be able to rebuild the economy, not only in our community, but also in our country. So now we're working on the matter of establishing a technopark that could give the opportunity to give jobs to the people living in our community. Thank you very much. As far as I understood, personal contact, systemic efforts, and reporting and accountability is the guarantee of the proper approach to rebuilding the communities, based on your words, because we understand that you are part of the Reconstruction effort program, but besides that, a lot of efforts is provided by the fraternal cities, and you focused on the needs to work with fraternal cities. And this is a different cooperation format, not like we used to do before the war. We would just go visit the city, attend the city day, but you're working in a different format now, right? Yes, absolutely correct. We visited the fraternal city to look at the processing technologies for the waste recycling. We've also looked at how they are working with water drainage. We've looked at the state-of-the-art technologies, and there's a lot to learn, and we want to introduce all of that in the territory of our community. Thank you very much, Georgi. And we have Alexander Sienkiewicz from Mykolaiv with us. I would like to give the floor to him with his presentation. Hello. How do you hear me? Very well, thank you. Great. Thanks. I think within such a short time, within 7 minutes, I'll just page through the presentation. I wouldn't elaborate that Mykolaiv was not occupied. The enemy was stopped on approach to our city, and for almost half a year, the front was being held at the southern part of our country. And with the order of the President of Ukraine, our city has been awarded the status of the hero city. From the very beginning, we have stayed and we have been defending our city. We were almost sieged, but thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine and the territorial defense, and even the utility enterprise workers who were working at the front lines and who were digging the trenches and establishing fortifications, we still managed to avoid the fate of being occupied. Next slide, please. The city of Mykolaiv has then there you see the green parts is the deoccupied territories for 8 months until the liberation of Kherson. The front lines were there. Before the war, the city had 480,000 people. The territory is 260 square kilometers almost. The city is very wide. It was very difficult to defend it, but we managed. Thanks to the engineering geniuses, the city has canals, irrigation canals that were filled, and the bridges were blown up, and that stopped the enemy. And another interesting thing was that in the worst times, 230,000 residents were staying in the city. Now it's about 2,500, and including the IDPs from the suburbs and from Kherson. We used to be a port city, working on engineering heavily. But now, as you can see, 99% of our enterprises are not working. The service sector is working in the city, and commercial facilities. So at the moment, industrial facilities are not launched. And as you can see from the news, the city is being bombed. Last week, the week before, there were Kinjal-type missiles with incoming fire, various types of missiles, and the latest shooting that happened the week before was done from the city, from the sea, from submarines, and four incoming missiles exploded in the city center. So what did we do, and what I would recommend to the others? We made the assessment of ruined facilities in the city of Mykolaiv. As you can see, the city of Mykolaiv has been shelled heavily, like on a grid. If you lay a grid over the city, you could see that each of the districts was being shot at purposefully with different kinds of artillery, with cluster bombs, S-300, all kinds of ammunitions were launched. Some of these missiles are very inaccurate, imprecise. A lot of residential houses were being damaged, over 1,000 private houses, 974 apartment blocks that were damaged or ruined. Around 100 buildings are totally destroyed and cannot be rebuilt. And we're still not talking about reconstruction, because the city of Mykolaiv is still, part of the city of Mykolaiv is still under occupation, like Kinburn stripe. So we are basically on life support and survival mode at the moment. This is the shelling, the one before last. Missiles damaged buildings in the private sector. Administrative buildings were damaged. Our museum, historical building was damaged as well. The Admiralty building was set on fire, and 43 persons were injured. One person was killed. One of the missiles exploded straight in the sky, and it hit a tall tree, and that caused even a bigger shockwave. But the number of victims is not as high as it could be. Could be worse. The city of Mykolaiv, starting from 2012, the central street, 2022, is living without the central water supply. A large pipe with large diameter has been blown up by the Russians, leading from Dnipro, and it's easy to live without a shop, but it's hard to live without a water. And I gave orders to drill wells, so that gave us a chance to give us some kind of water supply. Southern Bug water supply has been established. I gave the order, but it's a salty water. It's okay for washing, for the toilet, but it's not good for drinking. It's not good for cooking food either. So we need to understand, we need to establish alternative water sources. And we're working today to establish an alternative water supply. And as you can see, this is how people were queuing up for water in the worst times. Now, thanks to the assistance of our international partners, we have addressed everyone we could. We've been explaining the situation, we've been writing letters. International partners have been giving us cosmetic systems of water supply, which we were installing in Mykolaiv throughout the territory. Now there's over 150 spots, where part of them are humanitarian spots and part of them are some churches, even, for example, received water purification systems. Even the salty water that is arriving on the pipes, it can be purified, desalinated, and delivered to the people free of charge. This is how the pipes looked after they were blown up by the Russians. Our people, straight after demining, you can see what the Russians left behind. They were simply purposefully blowing up the pipes to leave the city without drinking water. We also had a problem related to the fact that we could not deliver salinated water into the district heating system, and more than 120, 130,000 residents are using centralized heating supply. So we had to create the opportunities for water purification, for the systems, for the replenishment of heating supply systems. And we have survived the heating season without a problem. We didn't sustain that many losses, although we have done a lot of preparation ahead. As you can see, many heating stations have been shelled, and rebuilding those boiler houses, heating stations, was similar to the open heart surgeries. We had to rebuild it while the heating season was still ongoing. We were addressing our partners. We would receive several mobile boiler houses to reconnect the system temporarily while the stationary facilities were being rebuilt. And I think the cities with district heating need to have at least one of such mobile boiler houses to maintain the system temperature so that repairs could be done while this mobile boiler house would maintain at least some minimal temperature to make sure that the networks stay operational. Because we cannot do any capital reconstruction works in the city of Mykolaiv, because part of the city is temporarily occupied, we decided to think what we could do as it is and what we could do after the war is over. Based on the principle Build Back Better, this is exactly what Yuri Bola was saying, that we need to see this war not just as a tragedy that occurred to our country, and basically we have that brought a lot of grief to the country, but also as an opportunity to rethink our territories, how they will develop and build back in the future after the war is over. For example, we have 3 schools damaged in a remote district. So we thought that, we will not be rebuilding 2 small schools. We do not plan on that, but we will build one proper big school and organize bus routes to take the kids to this modern, normal, proper school. And this is relevant for everything. So we decided, we became a pilot project with UNPC, the European Economic Commission, one of the UN structures, and 2 cities, Mykolaiv and Kherson, have become pilot projects for this, to build a new general plan. This general plan is not just a document, is not just the development of city construction documents that we've only used in Ukraine to establish certain zones for the city zoning or for limiting and restricting city development, but it will be a strategic development document, and we all need to complete this document before the end of the year. It will become a basic document or a visualization of what we can expect in the future. Moreover, we need to understand that the city chiefs are not there forever. And moreover, they are elected officials. And today, we are not making this document to match the preferences of one city chief, but a document that will be independent of specific officials, but will become a guideline, basically, with the assistance of international partners who already have the experience of solving questions of rebuilding their territories. We visited Rotterdam, and we're now cooperating with Rotterdam so that they could help us recreate the history, recreate the infrastructure of our port. We have the ambitious plan to become port number 2 in the country. We were port number 2 after Odessa ports, but we are taking a lot of reshipment. And if Mykolaiv city port is opened, we would be able to export twice as much grain as we do now. So Mykolaiv is a port city, and we want this not just to be our specialization, but we want to expand on that. Basically, these are the ideas that we want to reflect in our master plan, all the key issues that we're raising in the master plan, innovations in the industry, accessible and available housing, everything related to engagement of our community in resulting that about 20,000 Mykolaiv residents have participated in online discussions on that, and that's very important. A lot of people are taking responsibility and working on reconstruction. Maybe it is important to take in information from the people, to actual residents, to make sure that the decision-making process is transparent. And so that people didn't say after the war that, oh, it was the city heads, the city chiefs' ideas, and we don't want any of that. So this is the information about how we're planning to establish this master plan and to develop this master plan. We have developed 5 pilot projects, which we believe we need to offer to all of our partners to participate in the general plan development, on the development of specific efforts. We have selected the development of one housing micro-district, so we have picked the area of industry and trade for pilot projects, innovations and enterprise, and startup development, etc. We have selected several green zones for their reconstruction, and we have selected the matter of culture and heritage. Our historical legacy that is part of the reconstruction effort. One of the schools, for example, is 130 years old. It survived World War I and it survived World War III, but it didn't survive the Russians. So we're asking Denmark to help us rebuild that school. Let's move on. Going forward, these are the examples of a bit of information about these projects. Next slide, please. Next. Next slide. And yet another one. The general plan is divided into 3 zones. And this is the question of water supply, heating supply for the people, for the residents. Next, matters of quick post-conflict reconstruction, that's 5 years after this, the matter of reviving life support and business. And remote prospects are 20 or 30 years after the war is over. This is the timeline. These are the next steps. Next slide, please. This is the end of my presentation, but I wanted to support the other chiefs of the cities on what we've done. I have also ordered all utility enterprises, institutions, and organizations to draft a checklist, the table of information of what they need to do to rebuild this, what kind of equipment and gear they need, what kind of facilities they need, with details. We have a specific list in breakdown by enterprises and also by sectors: automobiles, machinery, electronics. All of that is sorted, and when our partners are coming in, they are first of all asking, what kind of help do you need? And we can provide this list to them so that they could pick and choose where they could help. Yeah, you can receive the presentation if you wish. The presentation is a result of a discussion. And I could go back to this, going back to our partners' support from the very first days. We're saying that we do not need the money. And that's kind of endears our partners. We didn't get any money from our partners, but we do get pumps, pipes, equipment. If we need to do some works, we're now asking for the reconstruction of some of the bomb shelters so that we could launch schools and kindergartens from the 1st of September. So we are giving them our needs assessment, and the organizations are selecting the partners, the organizations that are controlling the use of the money, the spending, because you know that law enforcement authorities are also working with us. They come to us and they're saying, okay, you're procuring this service of reconstruction of this equipment is 30% more expensive than it could be. I'm saying, okay, terrific. The crime has been solved. But problem is we are not rebuilding this. Our partners are doing that. They are just used the Prozoro system to procure this repair service. And we're not using a single kopic. And you're running in the wrong direction. So to make sure we do not become the kind of people that the Russian propaganda was telling that we are, that Ukraine is the country of thieves that are stealing any kind of aid and misusing it, it's very important to rebuild our reputation at the global market today, in the global community, so that nobody could think that Ukraine is abusing the help it's getting. So transparent use, transparent systems, and consent that assistance is not about the money, but it's about the benefits to the communities. Thank you very much for the experience you have shared. Thank you very much for telling about your achievements. I've already heard that Mykolaiv is not talking about rebuilding. It's currently under attack, but I have seen the new restored swimming pool, for example. I'm sure you haven't yet used the the tickets to the swimming pool because you keep on going around and receiving help, securing help. But this in the process of the registration of this online webinar, there was a question: how do you hold the people in the city? How do you keep the people in the city? I wanted to ask this question for you. This is a very difficult question. Moreover, I can say that this is one of the biggest challenges for our country. Not just about keeping the people, but about bringing them back. Because usually the people who have stayed were the elderly people who needed help all the time. In November last year, there was a heavy shooting of one of the buildings, heavy shelling, and 2 blocks of one building, 2 stairwells were ruined. 40 apartments were ruined, but only 7 people died during that shooting. So out of 40 apartments, only 7 people were at home, and they were the ones who were killed. And what saved other people is that they were not there. Now the shellings are not as heavy, and we're telling the people that if you wish, you can go back, can come back. But if the war goes on, it will be the longer it goes on, the harder it will be to bring the people back. What we need to do now is we need to rebuild everything that the people were used to: kindergartens, schools, shopping malls. Obviously, this may not look very normal for the people in the front lines. That we're fighting a war here and they are going to shopping malls, but the life is ongoing and we need to bring the people back into normal life. Women, children, we need to create all these facilities. Also, I'm saying at all of the conferences where the representatives of the state are present, representatives of the cabinet of ministers, that it's important today to create a special program and special economic levers in the communities that were deoccupied or that are staying close to the Russian borders, because it's very important to make sure that the investments are going into those parts of the country rather than the western parts, which did not suffer much. So you need to consider the investments into the areas that suffered more as a result of the Russian aggression, because after the war we might get even harder gray zones. There will be the Matthew effect, so that the ruined areas will be even more ruined, and the richer areas will be developing more actively. Yuri Bova is also there, and perhaps another chief would be able to give a response. Yuri, we have a question here about 62 billion were collected by the fund of combating aggression. What is your experience? Well, I'm not ready to to speak for the government about how this money will be distributed, but I'm convinced that every city that has been damaged will not be alone with this problem. Let's just have some patience. Of course, we want things to happen fast, but when there's a choice between Akhtirka and giving them a TPP or the rebuilding of a railway station facility, I am saying myself that give it to Akhtirka because they need a TPP. But there are some procedures, and the country is working. The agency has been launched, and I think that there will be a clear reaction on how the agency will be working. The agency is taking more and more communities on board. And I would just add Alexander Sienkiewicz has partially touched upon that. So while we're designing the projects, make them energy efficient as much as possible. We're talking about green energy and climate, and the donors are clearly seeing that because for their countries, this issue is also very relevant. When a specific building needs to consume less resources and maybe even be a passive building in terms of consumption of gas and lighting, and then as we are rebuilding, for example, with GIZ reconstruction of a hospital, and together with the Association of Energy Efficient Cities, we're setting up solar station on the roof. One is already working, another one will be launched within a few days. So this hospital is going to be energy efficient in terms of electricity.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. I appreciate your answers. The delegates are appreciative of your constructive and far-sighted approach that goes for all mayors. Maybe Georgi is here. There is a question here regarding partnership projects that can assess the possibilities of reconstruction of the objects. So, did you have any objects that were found to be the ones that cannot be reconstructed? It's not worth doing that. Alexander Sienkiewicz. So did you identify the objects that you're not going to reconstruct? We did. But today we also have the issue regarding ownership. For instance, there are several block of flats and the government doesn't have respect to legislation. What should be done to that end, whether that's a local budget, whether we need local money or maybe something else. When the war is over, we are going to demolish partially destroyed houses and we'll build new ones to provide apartments to the people there. That's going to be supported by the World Bank and with the support of the state budget. As to the social infrastructure, for instance, schools and social institutions, we are not going to reconstruct some of them. Something else will be built instead of them, and we'll build schools following the new principle. So that's the principle that will follow energy efficiency, will create a new learning environment. It's not going to be just the Soviet type of a school that is going to be reconstructed, but it's going to be the educational facility where you would like to stay and learn. And one question, and Yuri wants to add, again, do you have a register of donors that assist communities? Because we were saying that we lack systemic approach. Well, we know that that could be an issue. You are the pioneers. You are the first to find the solutions to the existing situation. Yuri, what would you like to add? A few words about the premises that cannot be reconstructed. Here we are talking about private and commercial sector. We used municipalities' money to assess the damaged objects so that entrepreneurs wouldn't spend their own money. And if experts said that the object cannot be reconstructed, so we are going to demolish it. So we don't want to act emotionally. We act based on security reasons. As to the register of the assets, or register of donors, that's a very difficult question. Donors specialize in various sectors. For instance, donors in Kyiv Oblast do not operate in Sumy Oblast, so we don't have any register. So what is it that I do? I'll be honest with you. I look at the information regarding some city. For instance, one donor is working there. There is a link there. We'll go use that link, write a letter to this donor. We describe the project, the objects that can be reconstructed, something that could be of interest to this particular donor, and encourage them to cooperate with us. There could be some kind of a competition between the communities, how many donors you are going to be attractive. In Bucha, you see ministers coming there, delegations visiting it. We are closer to the border. There are less people that come to us, but there are organizations that are ready to come to us, though we are 10 kilometers away. There is risk of shelling. That's your own choice, how you do that. You can call your friends, colleagues. We are ready to share the information that we have. Red Cross, UNDP, GIZ, lots of other foundations that are actively working, people in need, step by step, lots of other different projects that are working in Ukraine. But everybody has its own priorities. For instance, somebody works with schools, kindergartens, somebody provides equipment, somebody, for instance, with agency works with water supply stations, supplies pumps and pumping stations. Last year, we had 130 different organizations. That includes physical and legal entities, including international organizations. That's why we have results. As I said, 60% has been reconstructed, and some other objects have plans for their reconstruction. Some of them were repurposed and look even better than they used to be. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your constructive approach. Thanks for sharing your best experience. And I appreciate the work, everyday work that you're undertaking to recover Ukraine and bring victory closer. Hopefully you'll stay with us. So we'll move over to our second session. That's the experience of cooperation of Ukrainian communities in European associations and unions. Let me give the floor to Tadi Tuluda. He has an experience of cooperating with Ukrainian communities. We had this wonderful cooperation within the framework of the projects that we implemented before. Within ANTS, we had extensive experience at the time when communities needed generators, and this French organization provided these generators to Ukrainian communities. Thanks a lot for that. If Tadi is ready, then please, the floor is yours. Are you here? I don't see him yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Our organization is called Stand with Ukraine, a French organization created to support your country, and in particular at the moment to work to create partnerships at the local level between France and Ukraine. We work with larger cities, but especially with smaller cities, so that the opportunity to have partnerships, international partnerships, is distributed evenly on Ukrainian territory. So just a few points from our experience as to the factors that will create successful partnerships. Firstly, is what we notice that intention of partnership is everything. Both partners, French and Ukrainian, need to come at the table with a strong vision, a strong ambition, ideas on what is possible. And this is the first factor that will simply determine whether partnership is possible or not. In this regard, our work is partly to identify those partners, but we really need to understand that it is an effort in both directions. Secondly, once the partners are identified, is the question of how to start concretely cooperation, establish contact. French cities, French communities tend to imagine partnership more in the long term. Ukrainian communities oftentimes focus on immediate needs. So how do you find a middle ground? The solution that we found was to address first easily answered concrete needs. In this case, this was generators, where a concrete cooperation can result in already contact between the two communities. Then, in a second time, partnership implies openness for long-term ideas, to exchange on ideas, to reconsider perspective on, for example, urbanism. How do you develop a vision for an attractive city in the long term in terms of quality of life, in terms of green spaces, in terms of infrastructure? We can talk about exchanges of agricultural technology. This is a big topic in France and in Ukraine. We can talk about water, electricity mechanisms. In this sense, it is of course useful to have partners that share some economic sectors, some geographical or urban challenges where there is the conscience of sharing the same problems. Finally, what I want to insist on is that partnership is before all a human contact. And especially at the local level, where small cities do not have an international relations department that will carry the partnership for them. In smaller cities, it's about planning for the next occasions, planning if possible for real life meetings, getting creative on how to keep contact, to write, for example, to give news on common projects. Imagine how to widen the scope of partnership. For example, we started with generators, but can we get experts together to talk about infrastructure? What about we start talking about kids, travel for kids, for Ukrainian kids, to improve psychological state by through a stay in France. So my conclusion would be to say that partnerships are possible. We need to do it to bring a perspective on what Ukrainian cities can look like after the war. And before, it is a human effort that requires sometimes patience, understanding, but it is 100% worth it. Thank you very much.
Спасибі велике.
Thank you.
Я прошу, можливо, від наших учасників будуть
Dear participants, maybe you have questions to Tadi or previous speakers. On the chat, there is a message that somebody wanted to ask question. Please raise your hand or write your question on the chat, because that was easier with the previous questions. I have a question to Tadi. I'm looking at the chat, no questions there yet. Communication with the communities. What are the principles that you use to select the community to cooperate with? What is important for your organization? What is it that you pay attention to when you're searching for the partners for your organization?
The main factor for us is to see that there is a vision for partnership. If a city needs humanitarian help, there are many humanitarian organizations that can deliver this help. There is many ways to obtain funds. But if we're looking for an international partnership, then this is another factor. We need to know that you care about long-term development, also in terms of values, about transparency, about democracy. These are factors that will determine whether there will be a good fit in Europe for you. Again, these partnership opportunities are open for all Ukrainian cities. It's not about size. It's not about how rich or not the city is. We want to see a vision of international partnership.
Дуже вам дякую. В першу чергу дякую за підтримку українських громад.
Thanks a lot for supporting Ukrainian communities at these dire times. We appreciate it a lot. I appreciate everything your organization does to bring the victory closer. Let me give the floor to Alexandra Tkachenko, project coordinator, Ukrainian Netherlands Urban Network. She is going to talk about the opportunities for cooperation between Ukrainian communities and European associations and unions of construction and architectural professionals, urbanists within the framework of their project. Alexandra Sienkiewicz, Mykolaiv mayor, said that he paid a visit there, and I know that their cooperation continues. That was the visit to Rotterdam, and they in particular spoke about the cooperation of reconstructing the port facilities. Alexandra, could you tell us more about the opportunities for cooperation Ukrainian communities have now through the cooperation with your organization? Good afternoon. Thank you. I'll share my presentation. And I'll briefly tell you what we do and why. And let me start with reconstruction. As Alexander Sienkiewicz and Yuri Bova said, they want to rebuild better. And to do that, Ukrainian professionals should get a bit of fresh air and fresh knowledge to be acquired from other countries. And it's not because we have bad experts, but we need to take a different look and different perspective at our cities. And to do that, we need the assistance of other people who could take a distance look at our cities. Let me show the difference when we talk about the reconstruction of this manner. We talk a lot about European experience of the post-World War II reconstruction. Ukraine had similar experience of reconstruction after the World War II, but there is a huge difference in the approaches to reconstruction, because in Ukraine, that time we were part of the Soviet Union, the law was adopted to count excessiveness in architecture. That's why we have minimization and standardization in architecture, where the focus was on engineering solutions, while in Europe they pursued critical thinking and tried to find unconventional solutions, and that had its impact on architecture of the cities. That's why our cities look so differently. As we repeatedly heard today, the reconstruction and recovery process depends on many elements and factors, and one of the things we started with is different actors and stakeholders, and it's not only municipalities, but that's universities, NGOs, different institutions. Since we are in the Netherlands, we sort of make use of the contacts between Ukraine and the Netherlands, but we all understand that in other countries there are other organizations that are very important too, and maybe colleagues from the European Bauhaus and IC will speak about that too. Let me just say that since recovery and reconstruction, as Yuri Bova was saying, it means that assistance is coming from many other countries, many different countries. We should take into consideration that Ukraine can get the best from everybody. That's a quick analysis that you see here of the things to consider. I focused on the Netherlands more here because I know about this more, but in Ukraine we do have experts too in the specific areas, that's technical experts. In the Netherlands, you can find experts with analytical focus, with knowledge on systemic transformations, with vision, with the knowledge of the processes of city development, participatory approaches, as Alexander was saying, water management, because that's the issue of the Netherlands that they are coping with every day and every minute, transport system, climate changes and adaptation to that. You reminded us about that. And if you are interested in the architecture of public housing and social housing, then that's too, because social housing and different models there, that's exactly what cropped up after the World War II, and it is still effective in Europe. And apart from that, the colleagues from IC will tell you more about Germany and Austria and Switzerland. They have very good engineers there, the experts with systemic approaches. In the Northern Europe, you will see experts on social programs, economically viable programs, any project that would fit climate changes, public space. In Southern Europe, that's more about public space projects. At the same time, you should focus not only on Europe, but the global South as well. That's developing countries, and they have a lot of experience for us to learn about, because these are the countries that are exposed to natural disasters with severe human tolls and severe damages, and they had this experience fairly recently in comparison with the European experience after the World War II. So there are interesting solutions there, and you can talk to the experts there. And due to lack of funding there, they are searching for cheaper and flexible solutions that could fit Ukraine more in comparison with the projects and approaches in Europe. So what do? We do networking, and that's what Yuri referred to repeatedly. We started with the IDPs in the Netherlands. That's people of our profession. We tried to figure out their needs, and in Ukraine, we're also searching for the network too, to assist people there. At the beginning, we worked in the manner when we responded to the requests, but it was a little bit chaotic. Now we pursue a more structured approach. We receive requests from Ukraine where people are searching transport experts, or for instance, expert on gardening or reserves. And if that's a specific request for analyst architecture with the specific specialization, then it's much easier for us to find the person and assist. For instance, if there is a request, let's say, could you give us the list of architectural bureau that will participate in the construction? That's very broad. But if there is a request, could you please provide us the list of architectural bureau that are ready to assist with school reconstruction? So that's more specific, and it's much easier to satisfy. Apart from that, we are also engaged in the following. We heard that experts are lacking on the level of municipalities, and you know this better than me. So to assist to this, and that's more long-term kind of activities and partnership, we have 2-week sessions when we pick up a subject to discuss. For instance, digital twins of the cities, and we talk about the role of municipalities, the possibilities. So every second week you can join the Zoom meeting, and I'll post the links to these events and discuss that. We also organize studio visits. That's more for IDPs. They just have office tours in the Netherlands, and there you just they talk to people to get better understanding of the way this sector works. We organize lectures, the conferences jointly with BPL in the Netherlands. We organized the conference about the housing policy. After that, we had a report. I have a report in Ukrainian. I can send the link to you. We also organized small lectures and a tour of Rotterdam city for ENS agency when they came to visit us. We also work with the professionals and municipalities, but at the same time we work with the students, because the recovery of Ukraine will take several years. There was a question about the recovery of Rotterdam, and usually the answer to this question is we are still in the process of reconstruction. So we are talking about generations of those who will be involved, so we have to work with the students. We launched online course, and Ukrainians can participate in this course free of charge. I'll post the link if you have people interested, and that's universities or maybe your work colleagues would be interested in 10 lectures that's going to be in English, mind you, then feel free to join. We are working a lot with the students because that's something that this generation is going to be involved in and reconstruct our cities. The plans for the future, that's think tank in cooperation with other initiatives, hackathons and workshops that we are going to jointly organize to develop techniques and methodologies. The Netherlands are more focused on humanitarian and military assistance at the moment. As to the recovery and reconstruction, so that's more of a methodology that we focus on, how to do things instead of developing specific projects, because the Netherlands believe that this way they will provide larger scale assistance to Ukraine if you tell Ukraine how, instead of coming and doing this for Ukrainians, instead of Ukrainians. As I said, reconstruction is for the generations to undertake. So we are talking about large number of people. And as Alexander Sienkiewicz was saying, we plan today, but that will take years, sometimes dozens of years to implement. And we have to think not only about us, but how to involve the younger generation as well. Thanks a lot, Alexander. Thank you for reinforcing the capacity of our Ukrainian institutions. Thank you for making us more modern. Thank you for providing access to your lectures. I heard a lot of feedback from the people, representatives of the communities that participate or rather listen to your lectures. Thanks a lot for paying attention to the students, because indeed they are going to work on this. Let me remind you that for the delegates of our webinar, we'll leave the contact information of Alexander's information, and we'll also repost the links and the courses that she announced for the representatives, the communities and city councils. Get engaged. Thanks a lot for your presentation. So there is a question regarding contact information. Okay, so we'll post that. Thanks again. And let me give the floor to Olena Rybak. Olena Rybak is going to talk about project planning for reconstruction of cities and communities. Olena, are you here? Yes, I am here. The floor is yours. Thank you. I'll share my screen. Good afternoon, everybody. So you should see my slides. Yes, we do. Excellent. I'm happy to see all of you at this webinar. I work for IC Consulent, that's engineering consulting company. We work in various technical sectors. We work a lot with many communities, and the communities participating today are aware of us. We jointly with international corporations, we implement lots of projects with NEFCO, that's housing reconstruction for IDPs, the reconstruction of critical infrastructure in Kyiv Oblast. With some of you, we are engaged in technical monitoring of construction of bridges and roads, those that were damaged as a result of the war. So we work in different sectors, but the main sector of our specialization, that's energy, that includes energy efficiency, sustainable energy sources, sustainable development, and other related themes that also include climate change. And there we work with many of you. Seska Energy Solutions, SAS is our sister company. You might have heard that. And in spring 2022, when we saw the first towns liberated, and Trostyanets was one of them, we started working with them. Why did we decided to assist in developing master plan? We wanted to do something useful, something that would be an example for others, something that could be scaled up later. Why was it master plan? Because this document is a strategic vision, strategic perspective, long-term planning, and immediately after the occupation, that was really a difficult solution to make. We were not sure whether that's going to work, but we decided to have a go at it. That's the document that is based on the existing strategy, let's say strategy of social economic development, CCAP. So we are not creating anything new. We take what is available in the city and just adapt it to meet the challenges of today. We heard a lot today about rebuilding better, and we shouldn't exclude the priorities and the immediate priorities here. So when we wanted to test this idea, Yuri Bova happened to be in Vienna, and I just learned about that, and we wanted to talk to him about our ideas. So we wanted to meet somebody from municipalities to test our idea on them, whether that's going to be important for them too, because they faced their priorities. For instance, the food, the basic needs. They were searching for the seeds to start sowing campaign. So it was not about a 30-year strategic development, and we understood that. The second issue is a systemic issue for Ukraine. That's something that we were actively involved in. So if something got broken, we fix it. And Mr. Sienkiewicz and Mr. Boer were telling today that if you have an opportunity to do it better, then we should do that. We have to take a careful look whether we need to fix it and reconstruct the specific premises, whether it's going to have any positive impact on our strategic long-term development.
And all of those things are part of the master plan, the way we see it according to international standards, because the general plan in our old view has become a thing of the past. It's more of an engineering document, while master plan is more like a generalization of the comprehensive view of the locality of everything. It's like public consent and consensus of not just what the administration and people are doing, but as a community is, but where the city wants to go, how it wants to progress into the future. This document also defines the resource base and the mechanisms for achievement of those goals. It also provides the basis, the foundation for the further short-term or operative plan. This is a very general plan and idea. Of course, it needs to be supported by business plans and TORs and more details, but at least here you understand where to go. What's your key direction? And that all the elements of the city planning and infrastructure and concepts, how do they all match together? I will not be elaborating on the master plan. It's there in our presentation, which we've done a few weeks ago. And the full versions are available upon request. All of these documents are available. I will just elaborate on the matters we've worked on. And we've even covered some of the basic things like the branding. It would seem like, branding during the war is not the most relevant thing, but you have to build the city strategy also on the basis of some foundational elements of the city's life. In the case of Trostyanets, that's of course a big Mondelez factory producing sweets It's a city-forming enterprise. It affects the local and regional economy, and they love this idea. Something like Trostyanets, the sweetest town of Ukraine. So starting from that, all the way through to spatial zoning, where we define the key city zones and how to bring them together, how to establish the industrial zone, where the public spaces have to be located, sports events, festivals, everything that is relevant for the city. And all of this has been analyzed. The connection routes have been defined. Would it be cycling routes or should a road be built? And all of these things were combined together. So this is just the combination from the urban planning. This is also about commercial areas from play zone where families can spend their time, some sort of cultural events, trainings, sports events, all kinds of various approaches, and everything is analyzed in great detail, so I will not elaborate there. And based on that urban planning, we have outlined the key areas with more specific investment opportunities, with the more specific facilities, whether it's a commercial center or public public transport or cafes, so various specific facilities that could be the focus for searching for partners, where we can search for partners to implement the relevant ideas. This is the surfacial, urbanistic part of the master plan. And this is where we're going towards infrastructure. The trash, the water, wastewater, energy generation, biomass plant. So the full cycle of infrastructural life of the city, infrastructural support of the city. A lot of these trends have been designed together with the city, all the details, where to go, where the people will live, where the business is going to be, how to organize all of that properly. And all the calculations have been made for each of those trends. This is the format. This is the strategy of development. This is water supply and water drainage. Until 2050, the target is to make sure that water supply and water drainage system should be according to the top international standards, the way the international organizations see it and the city authorities see it. 100 million euros are required, is required. But there are some chunks. You could sort of break it down for investments until 2030, then 2030 to 2040, and then another decade. And that would help international partners understand where to start, because bringing in 100 million isn't realistic straight away. 50 million is a lot as well, but it's a start. And further breakdown may follow. We did the same thing on waste, on power generation, and these are various tables, but this is the beginning. And we believe it has to help the city focus what's necessary. And international partners who have received and who will receive this master plan would also have a better understanding where to look at. Because as the colleagues have said, different donors are working on different sectors, different areas, different industries. Some people are working on architecture, some are only working on heating, others are working on water treatment. So, that's what we've offered. What we achieved, I would say we need to understand that Ukraine has the reconstruction plans with all kinds of complex facilities. And there is a development plan, and Ukraine has resolutions, and all of those reconstruction plans are being regulated. And when master plan was designed, we were asked, why didn't you adopt it, and why don't you adopt it officially? We had an analysis, and there was a master plan, and the resolution was not there yet. It kind of passed us by. And our master class brings together, it doesn't cover the points where the areas need to be rebuilt because water supply or heating supply is urgent, but it doesn't ignore those needs any more than that. And it's a tool for long-term planning. Well, that does not take into account the fact that the city already knows its needs much better, that you need to rebuild this boiler house to supply heating in 3 months' time.
It is different from Ukrainian documents because it's meant more for international donors and financial organizations and partners. So what is it that we have accomplished through this kind of exercise? We do hope that it is a kind of a strategic document that contains a plan for 30 years. That's important for Ukraine and for the donors. Why? Because while in Ukraine we might see the change of a mayor in the course of the 20 years, we see local policy being changed then, and international partners lack the stability then at the local level. And it would be good that this type of a document not just exist on a paper, but it is important for this document to be a live document. Well, it is subject to updating, adjustment, and can be changed in 10 years, but it's very important to have a plan so that the scenes that you're doing today would reflect strategic vision. That's very important for international partners. Another courageous step that we had, that's a zero use of gas. So that's what we are trying to do as part of the energy independence efforts. We did have active discussions to this end. Again, to prepare respective documents, it's very important to get the city engaged. If consultant comes and says, okay, I'll do everything for you, and you'll have a cool plan in hand, forget about this type of work, because without active involvement of the city, this document is never going to be implemented. That's why active involvement of the city, that was hours of phone conversations and really difficult discussions. Why? Because the document is developed for you, and that's very important to understand. Another thing that is important about this document is investment calculations that we conducted with priorities, but without immediate needs, immediate measures, and another thing, how to return people. Trostyanets is several kilometers away from the border, so that's a difficult decision for the people to take, whether to go back there or not. But this type of investment planning that is reflected in this document, and given the ambitions and energy and speed of recovery in the city, I think that's going to be a very powerful signal to tell people that, okay, so the city that is located on the border does have a future, and this future is really cool. After the presentation of this master plan, the colleagues started making jokes whether we should have an office in Trostyanets, because there are lots of plans for the future there. So that's what we try to do. We do hope that the city will be able to implement it. We will assist where we can. The most important thing is implementation stage, despite everything and anything. So that's our suggestion as to the approaches of reconstruction and recovery of Ukrainian cities. We'll be glad to help. Thank you, Olena. While you were telling about Trostyanets, we get the question from Marina, the city and its infrastructure fully destroyed. We've been under temporary occupation. We need assistance in developing a master plan. What are your recommendations? As it was mentioned today, it was a volunteer type of a project. Unfortunately, we don't have resources to do it always like that as a volunteer type of a project. We did this for Trostyanets. Donors and international organizations keep your needs in focus. And okay, so we are ready to share our experience and tell you how you should do that, but I believe that you need to find and search for international organizations that will help you in funding. But don't mix it with the program type of document that is about recovery, a master plan that's about international organizations. So to my knowledge, there are projects that consider funding this this type of documents development. Thank you. There are questions. Can participants ask the questions? Yes. Turn your mic on, please. We don't hear you. While we are waiting for Alexandra Boyko, Alexandra Tkachenko, the floor is yours. It's not a question, but just a comment for representatives of the communities. When we can pay the experts, and when you can pay the experts and you can invite consultants, please make sure that you ask the companies specifically about what kind of experts they have. For instance, ICs do have experts in each of the sectors, and it's very important to know what kind of experts they have, especially if it is free of charge. You can filter those who could serve your needs. It was a very expensive thing. 15 people were working for 8 months, not every day, but we engaged international experts, and that was a huge work that we've undertaken. We are very happy that we had an opportunity to do that this way. But if out of 15, these 10 people are from our office, 3 or 4 are international experts, international architect, water expert, international urban expert. These are our partners. But they did that free of charge, and we did this jointly. And that's an important element. Thank you for noting that. I've seen examples here in the Netherlands when some companies wanted to participate in the reconstruction because that's let's say prestigious thing for companies. It's like ticking the box on the CV, but at the same time they have charismatic leaders, but they don't have a team that would be able to do that. And that's exactly what municipalities here do. So when a municipality invites a company to undertake a complex multidisciplinary project, they always request the composition of the team that is going to work on that. And I think every city in Ukraine should choose carefully these companies and do that through the tender so that the Ukrainian cities can choose the best. Thank you to all of you. Olena, thanks a lot to you for your wonderful presentation. I am grateful to the speakers. Apologies if you didn't manage to join in. The participants of the webinar will get the information about everything that we had here. So we'll have a link to the agenda That's going to be done by the European Commission with detailed information about the opportunities for Ukrainian communities. That's going to be translated into Ukrainian. And there is a question whether there will be a recording of the webinar. Yes, we have the recording and you'll be able to view it. So if you have any other questions, comments, or want to share your contacts, please do that in the chat. It seems to me that today's meeting is going to contribute in the facilitation process of getting partners by Ukrainian communities. Let me thank everybody who was with us today. And from my perspective, we have a lot of interesting ideas that were expressed today. And the first thing is that Ukrainian communities should be ready for international partnership and partnership with donors. You have to clearly know and develop your plans. That's a lot of work of modernization that is behind reconstruction, and our partners and international organizations that are getting engaged in this process are ready to work with us. But as practice shows, and as experience of the mayors that spoke today shows, you have to be proactive, you have to engage your own contacts, you have to monitor the programs that are implemented by the international organizations that work in Ukraine, and you have to be systemic, you have to have a reporting system. I'm sure that everything will work well for us. I wish all of us quiet and useful. Could you please just give me a chance to ask the question? I switched over to a different device. That's Alexandra Boyko. We wanted to get a question, but we couldn't hear you. I am from the phone. Now, I want everybody to hear me. I'm not going to speak for a while. But my question is, on November 25 last year, there was a report on reconstruction of the Trostyanets. The question to Yulia Rybak, why would you develop master plan if there is a strategy of reconstruction development? Sorry, it's not to Elena Rybak, that's to Yulia. That's to Elena Rybak. So strategy and how strategy is used or not used when it comes to reconstruction. You mean the concept of reconstruction and sustainable development or recovery plan? I think the name is concept. That's something that Andes was doing, and that was English money that was used for developing the concept of the strategy. Let me answer your question. We started our work in summer, and to my knowledge, two other documents were developed a little bit later. Why? That's not the question to me, but to the city.
We have analyzed both of those documents, and I would say none of them are overlapping. I even have the Excel of which sections is included in which document of the concept. I don't even understand. I didn't even remember which one I need to look up right now. The reconstruction plan is for populated area, economic assessment, blah, 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 information about the presence and the availability of the deconstruction documents, what's necessary to prepare the territories, what damage was done by the invasion. Our master plan doesn't have that. Then environmental impacts, environmental assessment. Again, we've analyzed the compliance with the resolution, and I have 3 columns of the documents, and we never overlapped, unless maybe the section on the plans of the development of the increase of the population or the shrinkage thereof. We could have, well, these documents could be designed all together, but I wouldn't say what's better because there are donors and partners who will be working specifically within the development concept, and one of them has the specific documents and facilities which are applying for the repair or reconstruction with various municipal institutions. And some of the donors will be happy to take this kindergarten, this hospital. None of these points are in our master plan. This is a totally different 30-year plan compared with other documents that we could receive. Look, the logic of the master plan, I'm generally happy on Trostyanets, the way you planned it, but I have a very simple question straight away. All the residential houses in Trostyanets have been switched to individual gas heating. How will you be heating those apartments when you give up the gas? Well, this is not the event for this. This is not the question for this event. There were hours of discussions and debates with our international and Ukrainian experts. They have reached some of the conclusions. I will not question the competence of their conclusions, so I will not respond to your question at this point. Okay, a different question. If you could send the actual document to chat, which is the report with the actual master plan, if possible, because the city of Trostyanets cannot provide it to me. I could, it would not. I cannot do that. Unfortunately, the city, we had an agreement with the city, which is the audience for the full document, because we cannot justify. We do not have the time to justify all the detailed calculations for hundreds and hundreds of comments. So we decided that it will be provided to international organizations, the partners of the city of Trostyanets, and they are the ones deciding where to give it to. Who to give it to our international partners, and it's their property. Thanks. I'll talk to Ms. Rybova. Thanks. Yes, I was going to ask about the difference between strategies and master plans. And one of our webinars for the municipalities, we've been explaining what is the difference. And these things are complementing each other. Vision, strategy, master plan are the documents that are complementing each other, and they're speaking. Well, some are, they have a different degree of abstraction. Some are more abstract, others are less abstract. They do not contradict each other, but they complement each other. Colleagues, friends, and all participants, I can see that there's a live discussion, and this shows that the topic is extremely relevant. I'm sure we would not be able to finish the discussion today. We will definitely keep on working further. I will be happy, and I think our whole team will be very grateful if today's meeting would be able to develop new contexts and possibilities for the Ukrainian companies and municipalities. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope we have received not just information today, but also additional further big advantages for the Ukrainian communities. I wish everyone a good day, and we shall finish our event here.